Welcome to the news and why it matters. We sort of slimmed down the group here and then fattened up the host. It was kind of a compromise. So we only have 3 of us today, but I think we can handle the news and why it matters today. Unfortunately, Sarah Gonzalez is not with us today, but Pat Gray is, and that is a huge honor.
We've taken all the attractiveness completely out
so
of the show today, which is perfect for television, I think.
That's why we also release this as a podcast, because this is what you have to listen to, honestly. Jason as well is here.
Yes.
Welcome to the program. First, we're going to start with Mercury Real Estate, which is, of course, realestateagentsitrust.com. Glenn started this company a while ago. I remember him being really frustrated when he was trying to sell his home, and he just couldn't find the right real estate agent, and things kind of hung on the market for a long time.
He's so picky, though. It only took 2.5 years to sell his house. What do you want?
I mean, I figure anything less than 3 years is fine,
right?
From an agent. But he wanted to find an agent that would do a better job, be more invested in what he was doing, and he was able to eventually do that. But he decided to go and look to try to help other people, and they created this company, realestateagentsitrust.com. We get this letter from a guy who's a big fan and been a fan of the show since the Tampa days. He's like, I always hear you guys talking about selling your home when it comes to Real Estate Agents I Trust. What about buying? Like, if you're moving from Tampa to Dallas, you don't know anybody in Dallas.
Right. And really, you have to do both. You have to sell and buy.
Yeah, you have to sell and buy. So why not go through some sort of screening process beforehand? Mercury Real Estate does that all for you. It's realestateagentsitrust.com. Get your house sold or buy a house for the best price. Realestateagentsitrust.com. Okay, top stories. Pat Gray.
I'm still pretty interested in the abortion situation and the left's thoughts on it and the left's lurch to extreme radicalism over it.
That's really happening.
Yes.
That is really happening.
Yes.
Jason.
So the national debt, $22 trillion right now.
Just the $22 trillion?
It's just, just a minor amount. And there's been no even attempt to even kind of give any ideas whatsoever on how to bring this sucker down. But when they actually do, they get destroyed in the press. Kind of like Betsy DeVos and her thing with the Special Olympics right now. So I'm going to go through that.
Okay. Let's start off here, because I'm with you here, Pat. And let me start this here with Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. That is his real middle name, by the way. Joseph Robinette Biden is getting beat up by his fellow Democrats because he wants to run for president, or at least we think he's going to run for president if he ever decides to announce. And he has been struggling with past positions. There have been times, believe it or not, that Joe Biden would be occasionally reasonable on an issue.
Oh, no.
20, 30, 40 years ago.
Oh.
Now, we haven't seen this Joe in a long time. But at one point, he actually was mildly, seemingly reasonable on the issue of abortion. And that is a big-time no-no if you're running for the Democratic nomination for president. The New York Times has a story today. And you see all this sort of opposition research leaking out from these other candidates that are going after Biden. Here's a great example of it. Now, it's the era, it's 1981. Reagan has just been elected president. And conservatives are pushing for a constitutional amendment to allow individual states to overturn Roe versus Wade. NARAL called it the most devastating attack yet on abortion rights. However, NARAL. However, the Senate Judiciary Committee in 1982 actually cleared that hurdle, and support came from the Republicans, as you'd expect, but also a 39-year-old second-term Democrat, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. He said, listen to this quote. If you want to talk about being proud of your faith, he says, "I'm probably a victim or a product, however you want to phrase it, of my background," Mr. Biden, a Roman Catholic, said at the time. The decision, he said, was the single most difficult vote I've ever cast as a U.S. senator. Which, I mean, first of all, it's just amazing, the fact that he looks at himself as a victim of his Catholicism, which, I mean, again, it's kind of strange. Although he was able to cure himself of it, apparently. He had basically abandoned the thing. He did talk to Catholic Magazine in 2015 to clarify where he was now. So he used to be a guy who would say, you know what, maybe states should have the right to make their own decisions on Roe versus Wade. Now he is saying, I'm prepared to accept that at the moment of conception there is human life and being, but I'm not prepared to say that to other God-fearing, non-God-fearing people that have a different view. So that's an interesting standard, and we hear this all the time from pro-choice people. And I think if you kind of substitute any other issue that is of debate today, it starts to sound a little ridiculous. For example, I'm prepared to accept that blacks and whites are equal under the law, but I'm not prepared to say that to other God-fearing people.
Right.
I'm prepared to say that men and women are equal, but I'm not prepared to tell other people about that. I'm prepared to say that straights and gays are equal, but I'm not prepared to tell anybody else that. I mean, you can't even tweet about these topics and have it be allowed.
And if you believe it's murder, you also have to be prepared to say, well, I don't want to kill anybody myself, but I'm not going to tell Jason not to.
Right.
It's none of my business. If he doesn't believe in God and doesn't believe in the sanctity of life, why shouldn't he kill somebody?
Right.
It's that ridiculous.
And that hands-off nature is not a bad instinct for most things. Like if you were to say, I believe that interracial marriage is wrong, but obviously I don't think it should be illegal. People can make their own choices.
Yeah.
Like obviously I think that position is insane. But the idea that you could say I disagree with something, but other people can do it, it's fine because it affects them only, is a position. But that's at least a position on that topic.
Yeah.
When it comes to life, it's not. You're affecting another human being. So if you think something is murder, generally speaking, you should be against it legally.
Yeah.
I mean, think about how far we've come. Let me put one more thing in here. I'm prepared to accept that Christian bakers should sell wedding cakes for gay weddings, but I'm not prepared to tell other God-fearing people to do the same. The left would never say that, and that's an issue of a cake. But they'll say it and be okay with it when it comes to an issue of life and death.
Yeah.
It really is amazing how far they've come, how fast they've come.
Absolutely insane. It's basically saying that when it comes to actual policy or things that I believe in, I'll have two different forms of those, from what these people say or believe in versus, in this case, Christians, and the agnostics or atheists or whatever that don't have that belief. I'll say something completely different to you, which is really ridiculous. You're separating, like you said, let's just take out religion in general. It's really the science of it. It really is a science. Yes, it is a religious issue because we believe in the sanctity of life, but also all people kind of have except for, I don't know, like Stalin or Mao or whatever, have a sanctity for life because it's a very basic science thing that you're completely denying. But so it really irritates me when they try to separate this issue and say, well, you religious people and Christians, we obviously know you're crazy and have these views on a multitude of different things.
You could have your wild view on that, but they wouldn't even go to the point of saying look, I'm prepared to accept that everyone should have health care, but I'm not willing to force that on other people. They can't even take that view on something like that, but they're willing to take it. The only time they don't want government influence in what they're doing is when it comes to killing a child. And it's such a strange stance. Nancy Pelosi's been talking about this as well.
Yeah, she was asked a question that she really took offense to. And I thought it was amazing because these super abortion believers never get challenged, it seems, in public by anybody in the press. Well, it did happen this week to Nancy Pelosi. She got challenged and she didn't like it. Here's what happened.
Funding for Planned Parenthood is an unborn baby with a human heart and a human liver, a human being.
Yeah. Why don't you take your ideological questions? I don't have. Look, no. Listen, I want to say something to you. I don't know who you are, and you're welcome to be here. Freedom of this press. I am a devout, practicing Catholic, a mother of 5 children. When my baby was born, my 5th child, my oldest child, was 6 years old. I think I know more about this subject than you, with all due respect. And I do not intend to respond to your questions, which have no basis in what public policy is that we do here.
And by all due respect, she means absolutely zero respect that I'm giving to you at all. But as a practicing Catholic who has the exact opposite view, opinion, and principle as the church I'm devout about, as the doctrine that, the complete opposite view of Catholic doctrine, but somehow that's a defense for her that she's a devout Catholic.
Yeah.
Well, you're going against everything that Catholics believe.
It's such a weird stance. You can be, I guess, theoretically consider yourself Catholic and disagree with the church on a particular matter, but you can't be devout.
That's a pretty big one. Yeah,
devout, right? If I'm look, I'm a huge Eagles fan, but I do root against them in the Super Bowl. Yeah. It's you're not an Eagles fan then, right? If you're saying, yeah, I'm a passing fan of the Eagles, and sometimes I like the Cowboys better, right? Like you're not an Eagles fan in that position.
If you're rooting for the Eagles to win the Super Bowl, I would argue you're not a football fan at all.
And the thing is, it's not just abortion. It's also same-sex marriage. It's gender issues. I mean, she's anything but a devout Catholic. She's a cafeteria Catholic. She'll pick and choose.
Like, what is she Catholic about? I mean, she can say she's Catholic, and I mean, like, she would probably argue, well, I'm about helping the poor, but only through the government, right? I mean, like, she's a government person. She wants that done through the government, which is not necessarily the policy of the Catholic Church. I guess the Catholic Church currently is they're big on global warming. Maybe that's where she's consistent with the church. But I mean, that is she always does this. She does. You know, the left continually complained about George W. Bush being, his faith is influencing his policy. His faith is influencing his policy, and yet she'll stand up there. We played this clip. We used to play it all the time on Pat and Stu, where she will stand up there and say, like, the word
is the most important thing.
The most important thing,
and
when
informs her all her policy decisions. Except this one and several others.
Yeah, except for the ones that she does, that are out of line with the Democratic Party. And that's the church she belongs to.
Right.
She belongs to the Church of Progressivism, to the Church of Liberalism, to the Church of the Democratic Party. She does not belong to anything else. At least she doesn't seem to listen to anything else. So, all right, let's take a quick break. We'll come back on the other side. We have stuff with the Second Amendment today and a lot more here on the news and why it matters. I put my soda in the cup so it looks like I'm drinking coffee and I can be like a sophisticated host.
She's agonizing.
All right, welcome back, Jason. Well, we know how hateful the Trump administration is. They hate all people, and they showed that this week.
Yes, they obviously hate special needs kids that go to the Special Olympics. That's what's happening, because Betsy DeVos came out and she just straight up said, look, we're yanking all the funds from anyone that is, has to use a wheelchair or anything like that. It's just like
that's not really what she said.
That's not what she said. Actually, she came out and said that they were going to take out the $18 million funding that they provided to the Special Olympics, and she started getting straight destroyed all over the place.
To be clear, this was in their budget proposal. So first of all, it really had no chance of happening.
Right.
But second of all, it wasn't like she came out and announced this policy. They just dug through the budget, found that they zeroed out that line, and then started asking her specific questions about it in front of all these panels.
Right. What's amazing to me, though, is that literally after getting all this criticism, President Trump just kind of did a complete 180 and said, oh, never mind, screw it, we didn't mean to do that, we're going to completely fund it, we're taking that part out. Instantly caved just because of the media attention on it. And when I first heard she was doing this, I was like, finally we're like looking at bringing down some of this debt. There's some things, I mean, why do we fund some of the programs that we fund? We don't even have to. This is actually one of her quotes, like right after, here's the quote, where she was defending this. She said, the Special Olympics is not a federal program, it's a private organization. I love its work and I have personally supported its mission, but given our current budget realities, the federal government cannot fund every worthy program, particularly ones that enjoy robust support from private donations. There is robust support from private donations literally across the spectrum. Think about something that we fund, the government funds. There is robust support in the works just waiting to fund a lot of these programs. And every time government takes a step back, like it was here, I couldn't wait after she said this, and before Trump kind of ruined it for me. But right after she said this, I couldn't wait to see all of the, just the crazy support people were going to start throwing into the Special Olympics. It would have been insane. Here's just a few examples. This was after Trump decided to do his travel ban. The 24 million flooded into the ACLU in one weekend. 24 million, because they want people were so passionate about this. Right. Exactly. That number grew to 79 million within three months. After Trump's first 100 days, the ACLU was up 8,000% in private donations. The Southern Poverty Law Center was up 1,400%.
Oh my gosh.
Planned Parenthood went up 1,000% in private donations because they thought it was going to get fully defunded.
Right, which is just making our point. They should just, at least part of the point about that they could just be privately funded.
Absolutely insane.
This happens too with Mitt Romney and Big Bird. Remember, he said, Big Bird, they were talking about cutting funding for PBS. And they're like, oh, he wants to kill Big Bird.
Yep.
Big Bird's not going anywhere. He would have been supported by the private industry. And the same thing with Special Olympics. There is an absolutely zero chance that the Special Olympics goes away if we stopped funding it, which had no chance of happening anyway. It was a budget proposal that was not going to be accepted. So, I mean, it's totally overblown. And I'll say, this is a kind of a quiz on how libertarian are you? Can you get into this? Because should we be giving money to billionaire owners of major league franchises to build their stadiums? To me,
no.
Absolutely not. $0 should go to that cause. Should we be giving money to the regular Olympics? Me? No. The government should not be supporting sports of any kind. Should they be giving any money to the Special Olympics? This is the hardest one. And to me, the answer is no. There is no reason for the federal government to, no matter how wonderful the program is, obviously, it's a great program. But let me give you another example real quick, Jason. We did a piece that's coming up. We're going to be airing it in the next couple of weeks for something called Night to Shine, which is something that Tim Tebow started. It is basically kind of like a special, really extravagant sort of prom night for people with special needs. And they get to have this big, awesome night. It's a really, really cool thing that Tim Tebow started. Should the federal government be sponsoring that? It's a great program.
No.
I mean, it's an awesome thing. It really helps kids. It really helps kids with special needs. But of course not. That is not the government's job to have people be able to race or dance with each other. Why do I even have to say that? It's insanity. And yet it's so controversial, we can't get the president to stick by it, his own people, for even a week.
See, and I would go even more libertarian than that, because I would say that our entire welfare system, really, we should not be funding it in the way we're funding it right now. Again, I said 22 trillion in debt. And I was writing down a few figures. I looked at how much we were spending just on welfare. The government was spending towards that. Before LBJ, the government, and I'm adjusting for inflation, spent $91 billion on welfare, on means-tested welfare programs. That included healthcare, that included everything. Now there's a chart that I have. I'm going to go ahead and pull up that chart. This is how much we spend on welfare today, 1.1 trillion. So 94 to 1.1 trillion since 64 or whatever, 1970, whenever that.
And we've ended poverty, right?
And when poverty's done.
Okay, good.
The vast majority, and you can see on that chart, is healthcare. So is the medical stuff, and in my opinion, that's the reason why rates are so high now, because of that artificial and screwing with the free market. That's why it's gone up so high. But the vast majority, it's like around 600 and something billion goes towards healthcare, which also makes it's just absolutely insane when they say we're not doing anything for healthcare. We're spending a crap ton of money on healthcare already. Now, the bottom of that, around 450 billion, is everything else. That's food stamps and giving money for housing, and then actual cash, for people that are, below the poverty line and all that. Now, so after seeing that 450 billion, I think I won't even touch the medical stuff because that's still an ongoing debate, but let's just take the 450 billion. In 2017, which is the latest facts and figures I could find on giving, charitable donations were 410 billion. So we're almost right there, the same contribution that the government is contributing to means-tested welfare. And a lot of that stuff goes to stuff that's not like housing or actually to the poor. It could go to fund libraries or something, stuff like that. But imagine if you opened up charity organizations which were decimated after the war on poverty and LBJ. If you open them up and let them go.
Right, and that also means giving people back the money they normally had to spend in taxes to be able to potentially give to charities. I mean, they would be able to cover these things in large portion because of that. I mean, really, we've lost the idea that government's supposed to be the last resort. It's now just the first option. And that is a major problem. And I think it's one of the things that I think is wrong with our view of history, which is we have to include LBJ as a candidate for the worst president of all time.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Not only was he a massive, massive racist, he's the guy who put in all of these programs that are bankrupting us today, among other things. But I mean, he never gets attention in this way, and he absolutely should get it. He was a terrible president. He's screwed our country for a half century and another century going forward. He's done more damage than even Woodrow Wilson and all these other guys, because Wilson changed the tone of the country, but LBJ is the one who really lumped everything on.
But like FDR, who extended the Great Depression, he instead gets credit for ending it.
Yeah.
Ending it, he became president in 1932. The Depression ended in 44. No, he didn't end it.
No.
And, for the first 20 years of LBJ's career, he fought against civil rights. The only thing anybody remembers him for now is supporting it in 1964 when it became such a political hot potato that he had to vote for it. He had to promote it at that point. And he had never done it before. He just saw, politically speaking, it was time to do the right thing.
What's amazing to me is when our country was founded and all these and it was working and it was doing so well, there was all these political, like Alexis de Tocqueville came over here and was like, why is this working? Like you don't have all these crazy social programs, and the people aren't revolting like they do in France every 6 months. Like, how is this working? And I actually wrote down a quote here if we have time to read it real quick. He said, religion in America must be regarded as the foremost of the political institutions of that country. For if it does not impart a taste for freedom, it facilitates the use of it. It facilitates the use of freedom. Indeed, it is in this same point of view the inhabitants of the United States themselves look upon religious belief, which was amazing to me, because he was like, look, they're doing so great because all these religious institutions are providing all these services that France is, the government of France is doing. Like, God is their God. The government is our God over there across the pond. And it's just amazing. And it's of that $410 billion that goes to charity, almost half of it is religious people giving to religious institutions. And they're hitting, and there was from Giving USA, they give to education, human services, health, public benefit, international aid, environmental protection, everything that our means-tested welfare program gives, and means-tested government programs offer. The churches are already doing that. And it's absolutely infuriating to me that churches are always Christians are called, and religious people are called, hypocrites, or they're not doing anything. They are. You're just not covering it. And instead, you're enabling the government to take the place of God and church. It just infuriates me.
It is. And remember, too, not that long ago, there was a big debate when Bush was president as to whether you could get, remember they were like, can the government even give any money? Can they help? Can they accept support from faith-based organizations? That was a big debate. The left wanted to end it. And you see where the left is now. I mean, they denied God 3 times, famously. They are taking this stance on abortion, which is incomprehensible. They have gone further, faster than I think even Glenn Beck maybe even imagined. I mean, he was already kind of a pessimist, but that has happened fast. And now watching them all stumble all over each other to try to get further to the left, to get to the left of Bernie Sanders, it is going to be an amazing next year. I mean, this is going to be the first debate was just announced, by the way, for June. It's
Florida?
Yeah, I think it's Florida. So you got a long road ahead of you, everybody. And one quick reminder before we go to break, Joe Biden's middle name is Robinette. Back in a second.
Good reminder.
I just want people to make sure they know.
Reminder.
You want a guy Robinette in the middle of it? So we started the show talking about the issue of life, and it's a big weekend for that, actually. First of all, the movie Unplanned, which is the story of Abby Johnson, comes out this weekend. It actually comes out, if you're watching on Friday, it's out today. So go to the theaters and see it. It's in 1,000 theaters nationwide. Glenn is visiting some in Utah. They've added a bunch of showings because the initial ones were sold out. But if you go to glennbeck.com, if you're in Utah, you can find out where he's seeing it, and you can join him there. In addition to that, this weekend is also the release of the podcast of Abby Johnson. If you don't know Abby's story, she was not only worked at Planned Parenthood, she had 2 abortions, worked at Planned Parenthood, was the National Planned Parenthood Employee of the Year. So she ran a clinic. She was deep in this movement.
Their rising star.
Yeah, really was. Yeah, and she had was in the room for one of these procedures, had a total change of heart, and is now fighting against with love, though, right on that side of the right side, I would say, of this particular issue, on the life side. And so the podcast with her and Glenn talking for about a little over an hour comes out this weekend. You have to hear the story. Go to glennbeck.com. You'll get all the details. Thanks for watching. We'll get overtime coming up.